father set a manila envelope on the kitchen table like it was a utility bill. Not slid. Set. With 2 fingers. Then he pulled his hand back and folded his arms and looked at me the way he looks at contractors when he's telling them the bid came in too high. I remember the overhead light was flickering. It had been flickering for 3 weeks. I had mentioned it twice. Nobody fixed it. We made a decision, he said. As a family, I want to tell you what was in that envelope. But first I need to tell you where I was 8 years before that night, because the envelope only makes sense if you understand what I built, and what I built only makes sense if you understand what I started with. I started with a folding table I bought for $22 at a garage sale in Tempe, Arizona. A laptop that overheated if I ran more than 2 applications at once, a Google Voice number because I couldn't afford a business line, and a client list that was, at that point, one person, a dentist in Scottsdale, who wanted help managing his social media presence and was willing to pay me $400 a month to do it. I was 24. I had just left a marketing coordinator job that paid $31,000 a year and made me feel every single day like I was slowly being pressed flat. My mother thought I was having a breakdown. My father told me I was being irresponsible. My younger brother told me, and I'm quoting directly, that I was doing too much. Nobody in my family had ever started a business. My father worked 31 years for the same civil engineering firm. My mother managed a dental office, not the Scottsdale one, a different one, until she retired. They believed in stability the way some people believe in religion. Steady paycheck, benefits, a pension if you could get one. Risk was something that happened to other people, and usually it ended badly. So I didn't tell them much, I just worked. The folding table became a real desk. The overheating laptop became 2 monitors and a machine that could actually run design software. The $400 dentist became 12 clients, then 20, then I stopped counting clients and started counting team members. I hired my first contractor, a graphic designer named Cora who I found through a Facebook group when I was 26. By the time I was 28, I had 6 people working under me, a real office lease in a co-working space in downtown Phoenix, and a business that was generating a little over $1 million a year in revenue. I called it Ardent Creative. The name came to me at 2 in the morning when I was too tired to second-guess it. Ardent, eager, on fire. It fit. My family noticed when the money became impossible to ignore. My mother started mentioning my business at church. My father asked questions at Thanksgiving that he had never asked before, questions about margins and client retention, and whether I had thought about bringing on investors. My brother, who had spent the previous 4 years moving between jobs he found boring, started asking if there was a role for him. I said I'd think about it. I should have said no then. I know that now. But he was my brother, and I loved him, and I thought maybe I could shape something, give him responsibility in a contained way, see what he was capable of. That's what I told myself. So I brought him in as an account coordinator, gave him 3 clients to manage, paid him 20% above market rate, because he was family and I felt, if I'm honest, a little guilty about how well things were going for me compared to him. He was fine at first. Not great. Fine. He missed details sometimes. Clients would email me directly with questions he should have handled. But I coached him. I gave him templates, check-ins, a clear process. I thought he was learning. What he was actually doing was learning how the business worked. All of it. The client relationships, the pricing structure, the vendor contacts, the tools we used, the contracts. He was paying attention to things that had nothing to do with his job description. I found that out later. I'm getting there. By the time I was 31, Ardent Creative had grown to 17 full-time employees, offices in Phoenix and a small satellite in Austin that we'd opened the previous spring, and annual revenue just under $3.4 million. I owned it outright. My name was on the LLC. My name was on the lease. My name was on every significant contract we had. I had not taken a salary under 6 figures in 3 years. My father retired that year. And something shifted. He started coming by the office. Not often, once a month, maybe. But he would come and walk around and ask questions and chat with my employees. I thought he was proud. I thought he was finally seeing what I had built and feeling the thing I had always wanted him to feel. I was misreading the situation completely. The envelope my father set on the table that Tuesday night in February contained a proposal. I'm calling it a proposal because that's what he called it. What it actually was, I understood about 4 minutes into reading it, was a restructuring plan. A plan in which Ardent Creative would be reorganized under a family holding entity, something he had apparently spoken with an attorney about without telling me, and operational control would shift to my brother. My brother, who had been with the company for 3 years. My brother, who had never brought in a single client. My brother, who I had coached through basic account management like he was an intern. I read the whole thing at the kitchen table while my father watched me and my mother stood near the sink. I read it twice. Then I set it down and I looked at my father and I asked him, very calmly, what he thought gave him the standing to restructure a company he had never invested in and never worked for. He said, "I'm your father." He said it like that was a legal argument. Then my mother said the thing that I still think about when I can't sleep. She said, "Your brother has a family now, sweetheart. He has the kids to think about. You're young and you're capable and you don't have those responsibilities yet. This is the right thing to do." I had $3.5 million in revenue and my mother was explaining to me that I should hand it over because my brother had children and I didn't. Before I tell you what I said next, I want to ask you something. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I've started to love knowing how far this reaches. Here is what I said. Nothing. I stood up, picked up my jacket from the back of the chair, and walked out of the kitchen. My father called my name once. I didn't stop. I drove 40 minutes back to Phoenix and I sat in my car in the parking garage below my office building for probably 20 minutes, just breathing. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry in the explosive way. It was more like the moment after something breaks, when the sound is already gone and you're just standing there looking at the pieces. I thought about what they could take. They could take the business name if they tried. They could try to move the client accounts. They could have the Austin office furniture, the Phoenix lease, the logo I'd paid a designer in Seattle $3,000 to create. They could take the org chart and the vendor list, and the branded email templates. What they could not take, what no restructuring plan and no family holding entity could touch, was the reason 17 people woke up every morning and came to work in that building. The reason was me. I knew every client personally. I had built those relationships over years. Not my brother, not my father, me. And in a surface business, relationships are not listed on any asset sheet. They live in people's phones, in the history of their emails, in the memory of every time someone showed up and solved a problem and made them feel like their business was in good hands. If I walked away from Ardent Creative, the most valuable thing Ardent Creative had would walk out with me. I went home that night and I did not sleep, but I did think very clearly, which sometimes happens when you strip everything else away. I made 3 decisions before sunrise. First, I would not fight my family legally. Not because I didn't have grounds, I did, my attorney confirmed that later. But because litigation takes years and money and attention, and I didn't want to spend any of those things on them. I wanted to spend them on what came next. Second, I would give them the company, the name, the lease, the staff roster, the logo, the client-facing materials, all of it. I would not contest. I would not negotiate. I would hand it over cleanly. Third, I would take myself, and I would start over. I sent one email at 6:47 in the morning. It went to my brother. It said that I was stepping down effective immediately. that the transition would be handled by my operations director, a woman named Greta who had been with me for 4 years and was, I should note, significantly better at her job than my brother, and that I wished the team well. I did not send an email to my parents. I did not respond to my father's 3 voicemails. I did not explain, justify, or argue. I just stopped. What I did instead was this. I took 2 weeks and I did nothing. I watched television I didn't care about. I ran 6 miles a day, which I never do, but which turned out to be useful for the kind of anger that lives in your chest rather than your head. I called my best friend Claudine, who lives in Denver, and I told her everything, and she listened without trying to fix it, which is a skill most people don't have. At the end of the 2 weeks, I opened a new LLC. I called it Flint & Co., no family name. No softness in it. Nothing that sounded like a brand trying to be liked. Flint. Hard material. Makes fire when you need it. I called 6 people. Not clients, not yet. I called the 6 people in my industry whose opinions I respected most. People I had met at conferences, collaborated with on projects, exchanged referrals with over the years. I told each of them, briefly and without drama, that I had left Ardent Creative and was launching something new. I asked if they would be willing to grab coffee in the next 2 weeks. All 6 said yes. Over those coffees, I did not pitch. I just talked. I told them what I was building, what problems I was solving, what kind of clients I worked best with, and I listened to them talk about their businesses and their frustrations and the gaps they kept running into. By the end of week 6, I had 4 signed contracts. By month 3, I had 11. I want to be precise about this because precision matters and because vague success stories are useless to anyone listening. Within 7 months of leaving Ardent Creative, Flint & Co. had matched Ardent's monthly revenue from 2 years prior. Within 11 months, we had surpassed it. I had 9 employees, real office space in Scottsdale, a waitlist. I did not advertise this. I did not post about it. I did not need my family to know, but my industry is not large, and word travels. My brother called me in month 5. I know the exact month because I had just signed our largest contract to date, a regional healthcare group that I had been in conversation with for 6 weeks, and I was in a good mood when I saw his name on my phone, which is the only reason I answered. He said things were complicated at Ardent. He said some of the clients had left. He said the team was struggling with the transition. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. He said he thought maybe I could come back in some capacity, consulting. He said my father agreed it might be a good idea. I said, I'm not available for that. He said he thought I was being emotional. I said, I'm actually being very calm. That's not the same thing. He said my name. The way people say your name when they want something from you and don't want to say it directly. I said good luck with it, and I ended the call. My mother called 2 weeks after that. She cried, which she has always known is effective with me. She said the family was suffering. She said she didn't understand why I was punishing everyone. She said I was being cold. I let her talk for a while. And then I said something that I had spent a long time deciding to say. I said, Mom, I'm not punishing anyone. What happened to me was not something I'm going to pretend was okay. You all made a decision about something I built with 8 years of my life, and you made it without me and you presented it to me like it was already done. I'm not cold. I'm just not participating in the version of this story where I'm supposed to apologize for reacting to that. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I didn't realize how much you sacrificed. And I said, I know. That was true. I believe she genuinely didn't know because no one in my family had ever been paying close enough attention. I want to tell you what happened to Ardent Creative. Because you're probably wondering, and I'm not going to be coy about it. Within 9 months of the transition, 4 of the 7 largest clients had quietly moved their business elsewhere. 2 went to competitors. 2 came to Flint & Co. Not because I solicited them, but because they reached out to me directly, asked if I was taking clients, and I said yes. Greta, my operations director, left 6 months after I did. She called me before she resigned to tell me she was leaving, and she asked if there was a place for her at Flint & Co. There was. She runs operations for me today, and she is one of the best decisions I have ever made. My brother, to his credit, and I mean that without sarcasm, did not call me again to ask for help. He made one attempt and accepted the answer. My father has not contacted me at all, which tells me something about the kind of pride that can outlast actual consequence. Ardent Creative is still operating, scaled back significantly, restructured again, much smaller than it was. I don't follow it closely. I have no reason to. What I think about, when I let myself think about all of it, is not the betrayal. That's the thing people always assume is the center of a story like this. The betrayal, the anger, the dramatic moment of injustice. But that's not what stays with me. What stays with me is the 2 weeks in my car in my driveway, and the parking garage, and the running and the phone call with Claudine. What stays with me is the clarity that came when I finally stopped trying to make my family understand something they were not built to understand. You cannot teach someone to value what they've never had to build. I stopped trying to explain it. I stopped waiting to be seen correctly. I just took what I had, which was everything that had actually mattered, and I walked out and built something new with it. Flint & Co. closed last quarter at $4.1 million in annual revenue. I did not call my parents to tell them. They will find out the way people find out about things they should have seen coming, slowly, through other people, in pieces. There's a question I kept coming back to during all of this. Someone asked me it, not my family, not a client, but my friend, Claudine, on one of our calls, maybe 3 months into building Flint. She asked, what was the moment, the actual moment, that changed things for you? Not the envelope. Not the kitchen table, not my brother's phone call. I thought about it for a while. And then I told her the truth. It was the 2 hours I sat in my car in the parking garage the night I walked out, thinking about what they could take and what they couldn't. Because in those 2 hours, I understood something I had been too busy to fully see before. Everything that made my business worth $3.4 million was portable. It lived in me. It always had. They handed me a restructuring plan. What they actually did was remind me of something I had temporarily forgotten. I don't give out what I've built, I just build again. And I always will. I've had a lot of time to think about what actually happened in that kitchen. Not the legal part of it, not the business part, the human part. And what I keep coming back to is this. Nobody in that room was acting out of malice. My father genuinely believed he was solving a problem. My mother genuinely believed she was being practical. My brother genuinely believed he deserved something he hadn't earned. That's almost harder to sit with than if they had been cruel on purpose, because cruelty you can point to. What happened to me was quieter than that. It was the assumption, never spoken aloud, never examined, that my success was a resource available to the family rather than the result of 8 years of choices I made alone, at a folding table, at 2 a.m, when nobody was watching and nobody cared. What I understand now that I didn't fully understand then is that there are consequences to the way you treat people, not because the universe is keeping score, but because actions have weight, and weight has direction. When you take something from someone who built it, you don't just take the thing, you take the person. And when the person leaves, you find out, very quickly, what the thing was actually worth without them. My brother didn't lose clients because he was unlucky. He lost them because the relationships that held those clients were mine, and I had spent years earning them one conversation at a time, and you cannot inherit that. You cannot restructure it into a new LLC. It goes where I go. That is not revenge. That is just how competence works. The part that took me longest to make peace with was Greta. Watching her stay for 6 months, try to hold it together, and then call me before she quit. That told me something I already knew, but needed to see confirmed. People follow leadership, not logos. She didn't leave because she was loyal to me out of sentiment. She left because she's a smart professional who could read the situation clearly. That's the kind of clarity that comes when you've built your career on actually being good at something. I think about the 2 choices I had in that parking garage. I could have spent the next several years in litigation, in family meetings, in the exhausting back and forth of trying to reclaim something that was already tainted. Or I could take the only thing that was ever truly mine, my knowledge, my relationships, my ability to do the work, and start clean. The second choice required more courage in the short term and produced a better outcome in the long term. That is almost always how it goes. What I want people to hear if they're sitting somewhere watching this because something similar happened to them is that your integrity is not a consolation prize. It is the actual prize. The moment I stopped arguing and started building was the moment I stopped being a victim of what they did and started being the author of what came next. Nobody gave me Flint & Co. Nobody handed me those $4.1 million. I built it the same way I built everything else, by showing up, by being honest, by doing the work better than anyone expected. The people who underestimated me did me a favor I didn't ask for. They made the stakes clear. And once the stakes are clear, the path usually is too. I don't regret walking out of that kitchen. I regret that it took an envelope on a table for me to finally stop waiting for my family to see me correctly. I should have stopped waiting a long time before that. But I'm not waiting anymore.